This is the Business Breakfast on Dubai Eye 103.8
with Richard Dean, Brandy Scott and Tom Urquhart
on the UAE's #1 talk radio station.
We are looking in depth at a new piece of research this morning, one of our favourite things, coming out this time from the employment firm Fitch. It's their Gulf Employment Index. They do this every quarter. And they measure the new job opportunities. In the UAE, for Q3, job opportunities were up 9% compared to Q2. We've got the founder and CEO of the company, Trefor Murphy, in the studio with us this morning. Trev, good morning. It's nice to see you.
Thank you, Brandy.
Let's just define your parameters before we get into the numbers. When you're measuring opportunities, what exactly are you measuring?
So we're measuring the number of new jobs created, whether they're replacement jobs or actual new jobs. But we're looking at that by market, by segment. We cumulatively look at our total numbers. We look at our position in market, then we put our best estimates in terms of what that represents in the market.
So the UAE is up nearly 10% in Q3, and that's not compared to Q3 the month before. It's compared to Q2, which is quite remarkable, given that we're saying that summer was busier than those less toasty months.
Yes, I mean, Q2 we had 2 Eid breaks and Ramadan during that period, but it's still surprising that we're up by very high single digits. A 9% increase off the previous quarter's significant growth, but we're seeing a very, very busy UAE, led by Abu Dhabi, then Dubai, probably in that order. But even though Dubai numbers have been the best that I've seen in probably 7 or 8 years. So really strong performance. Like, seem to be a lot of organisations coming here and a lot of organisations trying to grow out their business here.
Which is the question, who's hiring?
So I would say across the board, all sectors seem to be doing very, very well. What we've got is the consulting firms probably really leading the charge. So across Big Four, management consulting firms, legal practices, all doing phenomenally well. Industrial manufacturing doing well. Some potential new sectors coming in. Public sector doing very well. Abu Dhabi really investing at local and federal government level in terms of people and talent and large people transformation projects.
I'll pick you up on the public sector in a moment because it does feature in this report. But if you were to put a really rough percentage on what percentage of these were new companies coming into the UAE and what percentage were existing companies, what would you say?
I would say probably 70 to 80% are existing companies and the balance are companies coming in.
And in terms of brand new jobs and replacement jobs when someone's moved on?
Well, I guess the 20 or 30% of new companies coming in are probably part of that. And maybe say 10% growth, maybe 15% growth. Yeah. So pretty good 40, 60 to new versus replacement people.
One of the other surprises, for me at least, in this survey was that Saudi was flat in job creation, given the Saudi buzz.
Yeah. I'm included in that, to be honest with you. It still represents a very high percentage of what's going on, but no growth was unusual. I think maybe at government level, public sector, which represents the majority of public sector reduction in jobs, is coming from Saudi Arabia. They've been more cautious in terms of where they're spending money and how they're hiring people into that space at the moment.
Okay, let's dig into that public sector, because I know you said you've seen strong public sector hiring here in the UAE, particularly Abu Dhabi. Yeah. But overall in the Gulf, an 8% drop.
Yeah, it's very unusual. Even though quarter 2 was very good and quarter 1 was also good. But yeah, no, it's just maybe just a slight reflex around the decisions to cut oil production, just reducing reserves coming in and then spending money wisely. But what's the public sector? So that's probably some of the drivers around public sector, reducing their number of jobs that they're creating. That's probably so. We wouldn't include sovereign wealth funds within those numbers. For us, they're in a different space. Investment, more like the private side of public, if you like. So this is typically departments and ministries at government level.
Okay, let's dig into some of the niche areas where you're seeing real spike in demand for experts that might reflect some of the trends that are happening on the ground, such as, I can see here that you've got AI in the tech space, for example, and a lot of compliance around law. Tell me what you're seeing.
So tech has had a really interesting year. It had a pretty stodgy first quarter. It had quite a difficult second quarter, and we're seeing some improvements in that in quarter three. Everybody, if the amount of conversation led to new jobs being created in AI, particularly, we would have so many AI jobs, but we don't, right? So, but there's still a huge conversation. It represents a lot of interest for established organizations to develop AI solutions as part of their business offering, as well as AI in its own right, creating a new sector, if you like. So that's been very good, but it still represents a small percentage of actual jobs, but it's still growing. We're also seeing real estate is probably the largest increase, I think, in quarter three. I don't think anyone is terribly surprised with that, but it's the growth across particularly the UAE and Saudi, but even the other Gulf countries is pretty phenomenal. We're also seeing, when you're in an upmarket like we are at the moment, for sure, sales and marketing, commercial roles are always a strong flavour of growth, because as people see economies growing, they want to make sure they're selling correctly into those markets and making sure that they're maximising their return on an offsite market.
So what's happening to wages? How much of these jobs are actually paying?
So we're in a pretty interesting time at the moment. So we're starting to gather information for next year. We've started in the last couple of weeks. I think it's really difficult to know right now what salaries are going to look like for next year. I think they're holding firm this year. I think probably we had estimated at the beginning of the year kind of a nominal 3 or 4% increase. We're probably going to see that this year for the most part. Next year looks like it's a bit more complicated, and just a little bit unsure. So we're doubling the amount of people we're going out to for next year's salary guide, which we'll release just before Christmas.
Why complicated?
I think it's so. Our job is to say this is what Saudi Arabia is doing, this is what the UAE is doing as an overall. And it's just becoming a little bit more difficult to do that, because all ships are not rising on the one tide. So we want to be just sure that we're getting enough data to give a really good, average of, and also to make sure that the areas that are growing most, we're seeing exactly why they're growing and what they're growing by.
30 seconds left with you, Trevor. What about the candidate inflow? What are you seeing?
As significant. The amount of people that have come here since COVID has been phenomenal. Some of the numbers that I'm hearing around the wealth that's come into the UAE is staggering. And as they then turn to create businesses themselves, I think that's going to be a real factor in the UAE's growth, particularly Dubai.
Thanks so much for joining us on the show this morning. We have to leave it there, unfortunately. Trevor Murphy is the founder and CEO of Fitch. They have just released their Q3 employment index, showing that we've got a 9% growth in job opportunities for Q3 compared to Q2 here in the UAE.
This is the Business Breakfast live on Dubai Eye 103.8.
Your ARN News
With Etihad Airways.